Hello, everybody. I'm Amy,
And I'm Zach.
and we are here. What are we calling this show? What did we say? Are we calling it anything yet?
It's a work in progress. I don't.
Okay. This is something that was prompted by what you'll see in the title, I'm sure, the description, but
Yeah.
this has kind of been something that I've wanted to do for a while. In the whole be a light.
Pantheon.
That's a big word that I was not going to use. I was going to say world or realm
Pantheon.
or whatever. Yeah, I'm not going to go with Pantheon. We started Be a Light Arts Collective, where it's just artists sharing their stuff and people talking about it, and it's really been an awesome thing to get to connect with people. And I've wanted to talk about how God has used music and how he's used even the secular realm of music for his glory. And I know, like I said, this video is kind of been prompted by the thing that everybody's kind of talking about right now, which is Kanye West's new album, Jesus is King. And I know that everybody's talking about it, and it's like, oh, this is another video about that, and you know, but just in order to it's like, well, why would it matter what these people have to say about it? And it's not like a look at us thing. It's just Zach and I both have music degrees. I have a degree in music performance as a vocalist, and Zach has a degree in music education, and he was a trombone player and a band director. And so we do have experience and education as far as music, so we know a little bit about what we're talking about. And we're not experts by any means, but we definitely can speak from the perspective of someone who is educated in music.
Yeah, they're musicians ourselves.
Yeah. So I honestly, I know with Kanye West and everything, I know he started a church, and I'm not really one to keep up with a lot of current events and things like that. I'm on Facebook and things like that, and that's kind of where I see stuff, but I'm not a big news person or anything like that. I just think there's a lot of negativity there, but I kind of had heard about it a little while ago, and it was okay, I thought it was a little bit weird. I didn't really know anything about it, and I don't listen to Kanye West music anymore. I mean, there was a time I really enjoy rap and hip hop, but his previous stuff, it was just stuff that I didn't want to listen to anymore. But so I didn't really know what to make of it. I don't know. That was really all I kind of knew about it. And then all of a sudden, everybody's there's this new album out, and oh my goodness. And it was okay. And so I think
it was Friday night.
It was the day that it came out.
The 28th.
I believe. And today's the 28th.
No. Well, you know what I mean.
It was the day that the album came out.
Yeah.
And I started listening to it, and I was just blown away. I mean, I didn't really know anything about his experience, and clearly there was an experience that he had, because and I mean, we've watched more interviews with him and kind of read up a little bit about it just to kind of get a fuller perspective.
Yeah.
And it's really, it is worth listening to, and not just, from, it's like a musical like style, standpoint or anything like that, which we'll get into that a little bit later. But it's really, it's moving to hear the things that he says. And I know, like, I was sitting in the other room, and Zach was working. I'm listening to it on my phone, and like I'm sitting there just like crying because it was just like, it was overwhelming.
Yeah.
And I know I was listening to it before you started listening to it. What was your initial reaction when you first started listening to it?
Well, I've been listening to Kanye for years.
Yeah, I think you were a bigger fan of his previous stuff than I was.
But I had fell off from listening.
Mm-hmm.
Like after Pablo, like I kind of just stopped listening altogether. And Jesus, I didn't even listen to because, but he was very polarizing. And to see the juxtaposition of before this album and before like the change, him pretty much declaring himself as God and having a guy come out dressed as Jesus during his concert
as like a mocking thing,
to proclaiming the glory of God in this album. I think that was the biggest takeaway the first time that I listened to it. And it wasn't, we've seen a lot of people, have that, that moment in their life where they give everything over and then they make an album, and it can be powerful, but there's also those people that make a gospel album try to sell. Yeah. And I think that's where a lot of people are like, well, he's just trying to sell, but the truth, like the hard-hitting truths that are in the songs, it's like, no, it's way more than just trying to sell records.
Yeah. And like there are some songs where he speaks about very personal things. Mm-hmm. And it's not just like a whitewash sort of, Jesus great, hallelujah, praise the Lord. Like there's some really specific personal things. And the more I've listened to it, the more I've kind of pulled those things out. And I mean, when it comes to like rap music, because there's so much lyrics that you're dealing with, you could probably dissect and get into all the minutia and everything, and like we're not gonna do that. But I'm
sure there's already videos like that.
Yeah, probably. This is just kind of like an overall and picking a few different things. But you said that the juxtaposition of kind of a before and after, and you touched on a little bit, but like what would you say? I know like in media, Kanye West had a very specific reputation. And I know like in some of the interviews that we've watched, I know there's a statement that he made where it was like, it is very public knowledge who I was. And he was like, and I was telling you about, I believe it was like, I told you what, high fashion did for me, because I know he has like his own clothing line and everything. And I told you like what alcohol did for me. Yeah. But now I'm telling you about what Jesus did for me. Yeah. Just as someone that listened to his stuff more, what would you say were some of the things that he glorified or just he was about before?
Biggest thing was himself.
Sure.
Like it's that spirit. He fell into that trap of thinking, oh, I'm indestructible. I'm the end all be all. And I think that's what a lot of people that become famous celebrities, there's an awesome thing about anonymity, but a lot of people want, that celebrity type feeling.
Yeah.
And when he got it, it definitely like made his ego accelerate. But one of the things, like just thinking back on like 808 and Heartbreaks, so my favorite until this album of his, he just sounded lonely. Like the whole time he sounded lonely. And I think that was one of the biggest things that I always would think, sounds like a lonely guy, and of course, in that album we had like the Daft Punk sample, and that like what really made like Kanye like kind of like elevate to where he had been, and now this album's doing even better because it's got God behind it. But I think one thing that he's known for is like an addictive personality as well.
And in one of the interviews we were watching, he was very open about that. I know he was talking about like a porn addiction starting from when he was very young. And I believe he said this was an interview that he did with someone from Apple Music. And he was saying that it really shaped a lot of the decisions that he made because it just was such a controlling thing. I mean, I think like when I think about Kanye West, like there are like some of the sort of stereotypical kind of rapper things that he was about, but there was something about him that was different than other rappers as well. And he had a very unique style. Like I always liked his different, like you were talking about like Daft Punk, like his samples and everything. This is just speaking musically. He experimented and he tried different things. And we were talking about this the other day. There's a rapper by the name of Mos Def, and I've always been a fan. And he put out an album. This was several years ago. It's called Auditorium, and this Jesus is King album kind of made me think of that album because of it just felt so thought out and deliberate, and just had a lot of unique kind of experimental like samples, meaning like taking sound bites, different musical elements from other things or something that would seem like it wouldn't fit and then fitting it into the music, just to explain that. But it's, I don't know, I know that's kind of been his style for a long time. But it's like I was saying, like there's just something about him where it was like he did fit into like those kind of stereotypical rapper sort of things with, it's kind of like the sex, drugs, and rock and roll sort of thing. But there was like, we've been saying there was like another level of sort of ego that he was all about.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that
comes from insecurity. I've always found that the person that has to be the loudest in the room or has to kind of beef themselves up deep down have actually a lot of insecurity. And, clearly, like if you're trying to put your value in all these other things, even like what you're doing, like I know in one of the interviews, it was the same Apple Music interview, he was saying that, I was addicted to like alcohol and porn, but I was also addicted to inspiration, which I thought that was such an interesting thing to say. He was like, I was addicted to like the high of like the next project. And I think a lot of people have that. Like it's kind of like, it's sort of a workaholic mentality.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's just like the next big thing that's going to prove who I am and how great I am. And, it's a counterfeit to who, it's a counterfeit to actually knowing your identity. It's like, well, if it's based on the next big thing that I'm doing, if that next thing isn't successful, then I'm a failure. And it's just, it's not a stable thing to base yourself on.
Yeah.
But clearly now there's a different message. And how would you say that the previous compares to now? Like, what do you think he is representing now?
Like in his music? And
I mean, as a person, but obviously through his music.
Like, clearly he's went through a transformation.
Yeah.
Like, he is beginning his walk with God, and he is a musical genius. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that.
Yeah.
Like, the way he writes, the way he samples, the way he does everything musically has always been very talented. But this feels like on a different level because there is inspiration from God. Like, it's in there. And like any person that's starting out in the faith, like, you're learning how to lessen yourself to make God more, and you can see that in the album, where all the other albums were about how awesome Kanye was. Kanye, and this album is God, Jesus. And there's a few places where, like, he'll mention himself or whatever, but it's nothing on the same level as the previous albums that I've listened to over the years. And I think that is a huge testament to God right there. Like, yeah, he even said in that same interview that God has a sense of humor. Like, when I heard this, like, I was like, this is hilarious, because this is Kanye West that's married to Kim Kardashian.
Yeah.
Like, these are two people that have been, like, idols in different areas, in the world. And now God's using Kanye to start changing, like, all of these things through music. And, like, if that is, he rededicated his life in April, and by October he put out this album. I can only imagine what his 5th or 6th album is going to sound like.
And like when you were talking about, like, this has kind of been like a starting point for him, it made me think, it's like, well, it makes me excited about where it can go in the future. It's like, just as he grows deeper in his relationship and continues to, grow in, or receive, I should say, the revelation of Jesus, who he is, I can't even imagine what that's going to be like. And it makes me really excited. Especially, like, just, I know when I was first listening to it, it was like there were certain things that stood out, but, I wanted to go and read the lyrics, and I haven't done it for every song, but I've done it for a few that really I enjoyed. But the more, like, I'm reading it and, kind of listening to the songs, it's like there's a lot more in there than I realized. And I think that's something that I really love about rap music, is that, there's a lot of metaphors in there. And I mean, that's with any kind of music, but rap does it in such a specific way. It's
like fast poetry.
Fast poetry, wordplay.
It's like Shakespeare all up in there.
Yeah, I mean, and I love that, because it's like the more you listen to it, it's like there's something different that you get out of it every time. I think we both like a lot of the same songs, but what would you say is, if you can pick a favorite, what is one that's really stood out to you?
All of them stand out for different reasons.
Sure.
Like, Jesus is Lord is, like, fire. Like, it's the shortest on the whole album.
Yeah.
But that horn line, oh my Lord, when they just get cranking and they got the runs and everything. I like.
Well, as a band person, as a brass person,
Yeah.
like I know that you're all about that.
Yeah.
And it is like the shortest song, but I love it because it's the last song in the album. We were listening to it in the car the other day, and it's got the horn sound, and like it's literally just like, you know, every knee will bow and every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord.
Yeah.
And you know, that's kind of that Revelation, the book of Revelation message. And I love the fact that he did use horns, because to me it equated with, like, because it is the last song in the album, it's like it talks about in Revelation, where it's like the trumpet will sound, and that's when every knee will bow and every tongue confess. But it's like, I think a lot of people, they associate with the trumpet sound, you know, when we think about Revelation, it's something that's going to happen in the future.
Yeah.
And it will, but it's also being sounded now, because he's proclaiming, you know, Jesus now.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's the message of the kingdom. I know that he talks about the kingdom a lot in his songs. You know, he's like, the kingdom is now. I know, in one of my favorite songs, Selah, he's saying, like, you know, people are lying and we are the truth.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm here and this is the truth and I'm going to share this with you. There's another song, I can't remember which one it is, but he's like, you know, I'm going to proclaim this until the whole world is healed.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that line.
Oh, yeah,
and
so good.
but it's just like, this is my trumpet sound. And I know that might seem like we're really like breaking things down and everything, but it's like, you know, as people that have studied music, it's like, this is what we've been trained to do. So it's like, when we listen to this, it's like, what does this, you know, pull out for me? Because I mean, he's a musician and he's thinking about these things as well.
Yeah.
You know, as much attention to detail as I feel like went into this album, it's like, I feel like it's okay to kind of pick through these things because he was just as intentional about it. So,
yeah, like with Jesus as Lord, like if you would have told me, because I had no idea what was going on with Kanye, because I hadn't really kept up.
I didn't really either. You know?
But if you would have told me, I said this yesterday, we were driving home from church. I was like, if you would have told me last week we would have been driving home listening to Kanye, I would have laughed at you.
Yeah.
Because like I had no idea about the album, because like I said,
I didn't either.
But Kanye West is proclaiming Jesus as Lord.
Mm-hmm.
Kanye West, I'm going to say it again, Kanye West is proclaiming that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's awesome.
Yeah.
Like, if he can get Kanye and his family,
Yeah.
I'm not, you know, we're not lifting him up to like, but
well,
Jesus is able to do everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Then that's why it's like such a sense of humor, because it's like taking him from, man, he's making fun of God. He has this guy dressed up as Jesus. The next album is Jesus is King. That is hilarious.
Yeah.
That is God's humor. He's like, yep, everything's going according to plan. And then wham, and just 180 out of there. And
yeah.
I just love that. And it's just so, he's confessing it the whole time.
Yeah.
He's confessing it. And another one that I like is Hands On.
Yeah.
Hands On, because one of my favorite lines is, told the devil that I'm going on strike.
Mm-hmm.
I worked for you my whole life.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm not working for you any longer. I'm going on strike. It's done.
Yeah.
I'm getting a new employer. That's God. And like that Hands On, like that, this track right here.
It's definitely, I want to use the word confrontive.
Yeah.
Because he's like, I know, I mean, he says it over and over again in the song, you know, Christians are going to be the first ones to judge me.
Yeah.
I think it's making me feel like nobody loves me, I think is the next part. He says that over and over again, but he's like, I don't care what Christians think. People, and I think I mean, obviously, when he's talking about that, he's talking about people that have a religious
Yeah.
mindset. He's like, I know Jesus and I know what Jesus did. It's
Yeah.
not about you. Because I think there's a line in there where he's like, that he didn't, talking about himself from like a religious person's perspective. It's like he didn't even ask for permission.
Yeah.
And it's like, he doesn't need your permission. Like, God already qualified him. And when you were talking about, you know, when he said in that Apple Music interview, God has a sense of humor, like I was thinking about it and it was like the interviewer really didn't get it.
Yeah.
And he was kind of trying to explain, but it's one of those things like you kind of have to know God to really get that he has a sense of humor.
Yeah.
But he was talking about he has a sense of humor because he put me in a place where I'm so elevated. He was talking about how he lived a few doors down from like Drake.
Yeah.
The hip hop artist Drake. He wasn't talking about himself. He
Yeah.
was talking about God put me in this position around all these other people. And it was like, he was like that, you know, because it took, he's been put in a place where, you know, he got there through, I'll just say carnal means, just, you know, and promoting the things that he used to promote. But it put him right in the center of all these other people that promote those things. But he's like, he's like, you know, there's people that I want to be where I'm at.
Yeah.
And all I can do is pray for them and love them and, you know, share this message. And he was like, because it's just like what it was for me. And it sounded like his family was praying for him and I guess ministering to him through the years. I don't know his religious background or anything, but you know, if his family believes, and he was probably raised in church or had some kind of exposure to it, but people were praying for him, and that's what happened.
Yeah.
And you know, but he's like, now I can do that for the people that are around me in the industry that I'm in. Because I know this album is being put through his record label, which I believe is called Good Music. But it's being distributed by Def Jam. Yes, it's called Good Music. But it's being distributed by Def Jam, which represents... I mean, it's a huge label that represents a lot of hip hop artists.
Yeah, that's where like NWA started before like they split up and everything. Just a ton of rappers have come through Def Jam.
Yeah, they represent. This is just like Wikipedia. They represent Justin Bieber, and there's a whole list of other like hip hop and rap artists. So, but Def Jam is
producing a gospel album, pushing out a gospel album.
Yeah, like that's crazy.
It just, I just love that things are happening, and like looking at like his daughter is at the Sunday services.
Yeah, there was a live stream from would be the Sunday after the album was put out, and I know he's talked about his daughter being in church, but she's right up there with him, and he was saying that she loves being in church.
Yeah, like it was showing her and one of her friends, like they were dancing, like with everybody and like singing along and all of this, and that's the way a child should be reared. And I know Closing on Sunday talks about, you know, that. I don't know if you brought any of that in your notes or anything.
I do want to talk about it.
But, you know, it's talking about raising the kids the right way, and like he's doing that. And like I'm sure people understand like the gravity of like Kanye getting saved like affects his family, which is all the Kardashians, like all
Yeah.
the people that have been like the trendsetters
I mean, like,
of the world in the
yeah.
last 10 years.
Like the Kardashians, I mean,
And the
every
Jenners
time
and
you
all
go
that.
into the store, it's like their faces are on the magazines. Every time you get online, their faces were everywhere. And it's just,
Yeah.
and I feel like things had kind of been a little bit quieter
Yeah.
the past few months, but now I understand why.
Yeah.
Because they're going through a growth process, and I'm sure there's been a lot of reevaluating,
Oh, yeah.
you know, about, things in their lives. But I mean, that's a healthy thing.
Oh, yeah. Like even our walk when we rededicated our lives, it's been a lot of reevaluating. It's like, should we listen or watch this or, play this video game or whatever? And like, that's a healthy thing to do when you rededicate your life.
Yeah. Just in talking about, well, like reevaluating things, one of the things that's come out in just the producing of this album is the amount of integrity that he required of the people that were involved in the project.
Yeah, I love that part of it.
And I know there's been some different articles about it, but in one of the interviews we were watching, I know he mentioned it in the Apple Music interview. He was saying that I asked people to fast, to pray, to abstain from premarital sex.
Yeah.
And I know there's some other things that he asked people to do. And I know in that interview, the interviewer was saying, well, with this new lifestyle that you have, is that going to keep you from being like interacting with artists that you have in the past? And my impression, he kind of was kind of roundabout in explaining, but it was kind of like, no, but I'm not going to compromise who I am at the same time.
Yeah.
And I just really loved that. Like, it's just because especially in the part of the music industry that he's been in, like, to say no sex, no this, no that, and not in a way where it's like to push people away. Like he was talking about, I wanted people to be connected and focused and, be of one mind and one accord with what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And it's his project. So, he has every right to do that,
Yeah.
And I don't know all the artists that are on it, but I know one of the songs, Use This Gospel. He's got Kenny G on there playing the saxophone. And so there's people that are big name people who are contributing and, willing to be a part of this. I have no idea what Kenny G's beliefs are or anything, but it's encouraging to see that there were people that were willing to respect his beliefs, whether or not they believed, and be a part of it.
Yeah, well, and I was even thinking about when you're recording an album, like you get really close to the people that you're recording to because you're spending a ton of time in the booth, mixing all the instrumentalists and everything. Like that's already a bonding time together. But then you add fasting and praying and, essentially purifying yourself from, sin, that's a whole different level. That's a spiritual level of things. And I'm sure the people that worked on this project walked away with a much deeper connection, not just with the people that they were around, but they had seed sown into their lives.
Yeah.
That will eventually, some plant, some water, but God gives the increase.
Yeah.
That they worked on this project that's blessing people's lives. It's not just. I love it's not just the Christians, the churchgoers that are listening to this, because that's probably a very few people, to be honest, compared to the whole world of what's going on with Kanye. He was on Jimmy Kimmel talking about Jesus, which was awesome. But it's like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And people are hungry for something that's real.
Yeah.
And you can hear it in the way he talks about it. Like there, I can't remember exactly which song it is. I'd have to hear it and be like, yeah, that's the one. But he's like, he says, Jesus saved my life. And like every other, like he's, conveying what he's saying. But when he gets to that spot, like you can tell, like he's excited to say that line.
Yeah.
Like you can tell, like he must have been smiling or something, because it was just slightly different than the lines before it and after it, but it was so real. And like every time I hear that, I'm just like, yes, man, yes, get it. And that's what people want to know, that there is something beyond what's going on right now.
Yeah.
That they're like, people want to believe in something.
Yeah.
They want to know that there is something more than just going to work and, working to live. Like they want to live, living to work. They want to experience something real, and like he's putting the truth out there.
Honestly, that's really what hip hop is all about. I mean,
well, it used to be about, now it's about mumbling.
Well, I mean, and that's something else. Just a side note, like a lot of hip hop music this is just my personal opinion. It's become like trap hip hop and things like that, where it's, if you like that, I'm not saying anything against that, but I personally, it's like, I can't really understand what they're saying.
Yeah.
And even with rap, like, because there were some things where I had to go and look at the lyrics to really clarify what he was saying, because there's a lot of little things in there. But I really feel like this can be a push to get back to the hip hop glory days, because for a long time people have been saying that hip hop is dead.
Yeah.
And I would really love this to be getting back to the hip hop glory days, because hip hop, it was really influenced by like disco from the 70s and like soul and R&B music. And it really has its roots in like, because that's when you can go and you can research this.
The Dr. Dre documentary was really good about that.
Yes, that's a really good one. What, I can't remember what that was called. It's an HBO documentary that Dr. Dre did, and it talks about some of the roots of hip hop. But you can also go, and I believe it's Vox.
Yeah, Vox.
They have a lot of really great information, because it's really fascinating to kind of just learn about the history and the roots of it, because like with like disco, like the kind of the start of like the like electronic sort of music, in dance clubs, like you would have DJs like switching out records and doing mixing and doing all that stuff, and they just started experimenting. But a lot of, these weren't like, I think when we think of like dance clubs now, it has a kind of a different feel to it. And I mean, yes, like, there were drugs and all that stuff in the dance clubs, but it really has like a grassroots kind of start, because you think of, I think it really had to start in just on the street, like when people had more access to getting a record player, a turntable, and it's like, like the block parties type stuff, or let me DJ at, like I believe like
Yeah,
with Dr.
Dre.
Dre's
Like he
his
would.
film, like it was he was talking about how he would go and DJ at just these local clubs, like really small
Yeah,
clubs.
and even block parties. Like he would
Yeah,
go
block
and do
par-
that.
And it really, like, hip hop, dance, and music very much correlate. And it really was an escape sort of thing to get away from.
There was a lot of unrest,
Yeah.
like racial tension at that time, and that was, music was an escape
Yeah.
for it. And the documentary is called The Defiant Ones.
Yes.
It's on HBO, and it's really good. It's got some language in it and everything.
Yeah.
But it's really good to see like where everything came from, and like this was around the same time. It was Straight Outta Compton. Like it was like a year, I think, after Straight Outta Compton came out that they put that out. But it was really, really good.
Yeah.
Just seeing that, and then juxtaposed with Jimmy Iovine, which was the producer that got with Dre later on, but he produced like Bob Dylan and like just not Bruce Springsteen, but it's the other guy. Yeah, was it Bruce?
I think it was Tom Petty.
Yeah, he produced a bunch of people, and like seeing like their journey until they met, and then like Eminem being in it, like all of these different.
It's really fascinating, but just watching it and getting the information of kind of his like starts, it really there's a lot of people that had that same sort of story where it was like, during the 80s where hip hop really grew into something. And it really just started with, I think of people just kind of like, dancing on the street corner and doing, break dancing. They got the cardboard out and everything. And it's like, I mean, I don't know any of that from personal experience or anything. I had totally different, experience growing up, but I love that it was this whole community and culture, especially just like we think of like the Black community or even like the Latino community, where it was like this was how they dealt with the harsh environments that they had to live in. And it's just, to me, it's a really beautiful thing. I know I love, like I had to sing in choir a lot when I was in college, and a lot of the songs that we sang were like old spirituals and gospel songs, and they were some of my favorite to sing. And just knowing the roots behind them, like a lot of them were like songs from that slaves wrote, and it was songs about faith and believing that they were going to get out of this. And a lot of hip hop has roots. It's very much influenced by that, and like it has a lot of the same sort of drive behind it. I know a lot of hip hop music, it doesn't necessarily reflect faith, but a lot of it is just really talking about how it feels to be in those environments. And I think, and it's like, well, that music is so aggressive and so hard, but it really reflects how they felt about their environment. And I know I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but it's just like, that's why I love hip hop music so much, is because it really reflects and speaks about that walk of life. I don't know how else to say it.
Well, and you were bringing up, like how gospel music has informed it, and like Kanye has been sampling gospel music in his music for a really long time. So this album was kind of like going back to that root, you know, not
But not just using it because it might sound
yeah,
good, but
yeah,
using it because of the message.
yeah. And that choir good.
Yes. Like his church, it's called Sunday Service, which I think is really cool.
Yeah.
It's generic, but you know that it's his at the same time. There's a choir and they've been doing different projects. You can go and look at that, but they're awesome.
Oh yeah. The every hour, like the way it opens up the
the
album.
first track, yeah.
Oh man, it's just like every hour, like, and like it's all of these, like, it's a full choir. It's not just a, you know, like a few people here or there. Like it is a 40 or 50 person choir singing.
Yeah.
And like in the live stream, like they have like the choir director like with Kanye and everything is like, all right, altos, take it, and like they just start singing it. It's not in the album, but they start singing some other stuff, and I'm just like, yeah, like it's so good. Like if you want like the full experience, you got to go look up the service as well, just to kind of get like, because there's more than just the tracks that's been put out, which I find very interesting.
Yeah.
There is a movie also that they put out to like accompany the album, which I would love to see and everything. But I just love that there's like complementing things to it all. But yeah, that choir, they're good.
And I love I really feel like we could get into like breaking down the style and everything. You know, just how he sampled all these different things. But I think the message of it is really, I mean, it's obviously what stands out the most. Yeah. And honestly, like, I think one of the things that I love about the album is just the album art itself.
Yeah.
I mean, it's this beautiful blue record with the gold lettering and everything. And I personally, I love the look of
I do too.
records, but I don't know. It just has such a unique look, and I'd love to know like what the inspiration was for that, with just the way that it turned out. But you know, there's.
I hope they put a vinyl out, because I totally will get that, because it looks.
Yeah, awesome. If there was a blue vinyl with all that, I would absolutely love to have that. But, and I'm sure it will unfold like as he continues to talk about the album and everything. But it's also like, it's a very basic look to it, because it's just Jesus is King, Kanye West, and there's a couple other little things. I don't know what they represent.
Yeah.
But and that's really, I think it kind of reflects the album itself.
It reflects also the relationship with God. Like, man is trying to make, I just had this thought, man's trying to make our relationship with God be this tumultuous, like you've got to really work for it. You know, you can't wear makeup. You got to do this, that, and the other. All these man-made things.
Yeah.
When it's just like, you just got to love God and listen to him.
Yeah.
You know, and like that, the album, and some people are like, oh, that's a stretch. But the album, it like conveys that. It's like, Jesus is King. Boom.
Yeah.
And then there's like 3 more things on there.
Like the simplicity of a lot of the elements, where it's like, this is the message, and I'm telling maybe different parts of the story in the overall message, but the message is simple. And a simple message like that, like I said, can have a lot of different parts in the story. There's a lot that unfolds with that message, but the message itself is simple. already said it, but one of my favorite songs, it's the second song on the album. It's called Selah, which when you were talking about the first track with the choir, they sing a line where it's like, sing until the power of the Lord comes down.
Yeah.
And then the next track is Selah, which is something from Psalms. And a lot of people will say that it kind of has an undefinable meaning, but it's usually used in the Psalms as like to indicate like a moment to pause in God's presence.
Yeah.
And whether or not, like, there's a lot of things where it's like, you know, we could speculate the intention behind them, but I don't know. I don't know the inner machinations of Kanye West's mind or his producers. But, you know, it's like, okay, we've sung and we've praised the Lord. Praise until you're fully focused on him. I mean, that's the whole purpose of praise and worship, is when you're fully focused on who God is, like you, and worshiping him in spirit and in truth, where it's like, despite how you feel, despite whatever's going on, and then you're fully aware of that, it's almost like you can be overwhelmed by it in the best way. And it's almost like you have to pause in his presence. So I find it interesting that those two were kind of back to back. Whether or not that was the intention, I don't know, but I think it's pretty cool. But Selah is like, the whole thing is just like, like, in like, it's like, this is the message, this is what it's about. And I could sit here and read all the lyrics. I don't completely understand all of them, but I'm pretty sure that I get most of it. But one of the lyrics that stands out to me is apparently there was a previous record that he was going to put out before this one, or around the same time, called Yandi.
Yeah, it was supposed to come out last year.
Was it last year?
Yeah, that's when it was supposed to come out.
Anyway, saying that everybody wanted Yandi, but then Jesus Christ did the laundry. And it's like, I was going to do this, but there was a major change in my life. And I just love that. But I mean, he's literally quoting scriptures in here. But yeah, like right after, well, actually, I'll start right before that. Before the flood, people judged, and they did the same thing to Noah. Everybody wanted Yandi, then Jesus Christ did the laundry. They say the week start on Monday, but the strong start on Sunday. And then he says, I won't be in bondage to any man. And then he starts quoting scripture, John 8:33, where the descendants of Abraham and ye should be made free. And John 8:36, to whom the Son sets free is free indeed, and he saved a wretch like me. I mean, it's...
And they got that snare going on that one. On that one.
Yeah, it's like, who the Son sets free. And like, I love it. I love it so much. And it's just like, you can't get around that. You can't tell me that it's anything else but the truth, because it's literally scripture. And then there's really like intense part with the chorus, and they're doing like hallelujah. It sounds so cool. But in the next verse, there's a part I'm not as cool sounding as Kanye reading these lyrics.
You got it.
But if you woke, then wake up. And I mean that's a cultural thing, but it's it's like being woke, being aware. But this is from genius.com, and they have a lot of annotations in the lyrics, and this is kind of interesting. Just a side thing. Being woke means to be conscious of societal injustice. This slang term has come to prominence in the internet age, but it can be traced back to May of 1962 in a New York Times article. If you're woke, you dig it. And it's interesting that it's tied to societal injustice and like we were talking about, like the roots of hip hop. But he talks later on in the song. He says, we're the army of God and we're the truth. People are lying and we are the truth. He's talking about there's been an injustice because people aren't being told the truth and the love of God.
Yeah.
And in
believing a lie and being damned.
Yeah. And he's saying that's like, that is the societal injustice. And I know there's another song where he talks about, he's like, my heart is with single mothers and like with, I believe he says like his brothers, that are in jail and everything, like African Americans who have been incarcerated for not just reasons.
Yeah.
And or being discriminated against, but he makes a statement that there's still hope for you. It's like going to jail is not the end, and whether or not it's whether you did something to deserve to be there or whether you didn't, it's like there's still hope for you. And but I just love the fact that it's like he's like, this is the great societal injustice, because in knowing that truth, that's where freedom really starts.
Yeah.
Anyway, and when it comes to being woke, being awake, in Ephesians 5, it talks about people awaking from the dead of sleep or of not knowing Christ. And it's like, awake, O sleeper, and rise up from the dead, and Christ's light will shine.
It's even down here. Stab my back, I can't front. Still we win, we prayed up. Even when we die, we raise up.
Yeah. That whole section, if you woke, then wake up, with Judas, kiss and make up. And he's talking about, forgiving people. Mm-hmm. Even like Jesus, he forgive them for they don't know what they do, even forgiving the person that betrayed him. Forgave my brothers and drank up. I would assume drink, because let me see. This is one of Genius's annotations. Kanye plays on the so-called kiss of Judas to denote forgiveness. This is ironic because Judas Iscariot is notoriously betrayed Jesus. And then this event led to Jesus' crucifixion. Meanwhile, the bitter cup is likely an allusion to Matthew 26:39, when Jesus prayed in the garden prior to being turned over to the Roman guards by Judas. And it says, quoting the scripture, "And he went a little farther and fell on his face and prayed, saying, O my Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will,
Mm-hmm.
but as thou wilt. Um, so I think it's really denoting, he had to have an experience about maybe forgiving people that wronged him as well.
Yeah.
Which I find that really,
Well, when you give yourself over to God,
yeah,
God gonna work on that bitterness and that
yeah,
unforgiveness because you cannot be in relationship with God until you give that stuff over.
yeah,
And I think everybody deals with that on some sort of level. I
mm-hmm.
know I dealt with unforgiveness when I first rededicated my life. So I know he's had beef with a lot of people over the
Sure,
years. So him having to work through that is a testament.
yeah,
Even if someone doesn't, respond, favorably to, apologizing or whatever or giving that bitterness over, you've done your part.
yeah,
He was talking about, just leaving his number at Drake's house or whatever. Like, I don't know if they've talked or whatever because they did have beef at some point, but
I don't
it's
know.
like he's putting the things in motion. You can only go as far as someone will let you, but he's being faithful.
Yeah,
Just like,
he's doing his part.
yeah, just like this album, it's like he's put it out there now,
Yeah,
regardless of who accepts him, who puts him down, whatever. He's done what he felt God led him to do,
yeah,
and like I'm excited
yeah,
for the album. Like this morning, I got up, I started working, and I turned it on. I was over here just listening to it. I went to go meet a friend. I was listening to it. I came back. I was listening to it.
yeah,
Like I know you can overplay things, but when it's got the word in it, like I know not everything is quoting scripture and everything, but there's good revelations
yeah,
in here. And, I think some people will get to the point where it's like, well, he's still, you know, doing this or thinking like this or whatever, but we've all like I still have road rage. That doesn't take me out of, relationship with God.
yeah,
We're all growing.
yeah,
We're all becoming what God sees us,
yeah,
trophy in hand. That's a daily walk,
yeah.
So
But he's making the effort
yeah.
to allow Christ to work through him.
Yeah.
And just putting this album out and doing the things that he's doing, knowing the spotlight that is on him, he's doing so much
Yeah.
for the body.
Yeah. And I think as the body, instead of judging,
Yeah.
we need to be praying and lifting me up,
Yeah. I know there's a lot of controversy out there, and it's
And
like
I'm not getting into that. I'm just saying,
No.
just pray
Yeah.
for him and his family, because this is an awesome time. Being obedient to God
Yeah.
is an awesome time, but it's also the time where the enemy tries to take you down.
Yeah. And well, I'm saying like the controversy in people doubting it or whatever, and it's like, but like you were saying in that hands-on song, he's talking about like, people judging me, and I actually want to look at the lyrics for that because it's really, really good. There's a part well, I'll read this part first. If they only see the wrongs, never listen to the songs. Just to listen is a fight, but you booked me for the fight. It's so hard to get along if they only see the slight. From the love of religion, what have you been hearing from the Christians?
Yeah.
And then it's that line that he repeats. They'll be the first ones to judge me, make it seem like nobody loves me. And then this is the part that really gets me. I deserve all the criticism you got. If that's all the love you have, that's all you got. To sing of change, you think I'm joking. To praise his name, you think I'm smoking. Yes, I understand your reluctancy, but I have a request, you see. Don't throw me up. Lay your hands on me. Please pray for me. Like, just reading that's making me want to cry. Like, he's being honest. He's like, I'm on a journey. And he's like, he even says, I understand your reluctancy. I understand who I've been. But Jesus did it for you and he did it for me. So pray for me. And like, that's so vulnerable and that's so honest. And like, I appreciate that so much. Like,
well, and I think that's what we have to do as a body is, we've got to just, instead of putting down, pray him up, raise him up.
Yeah.
It talks about that in Proverbs where if you raise someone up, you raise yourself up.
Yeah.
That's what we got to do right now.
Because, I mean, he's out there preaching the message of repentance.
Yeah.
And it's not, you're a sinner. It's like, he's like, I know who I was, but then God changed me. And repentance, it means to change the way you were thinking, the way you were doing things. It's like, yeah, that might be who I was, but now I'm this.
I think that's why a lot of people are equating him to like a modern day Paul, because Paul was originally Saul, and he was murdering Christians left and right. He was the worst of the worst in the eyes of the Christians because he was coming after them.
Yeah.
But he was the best at his craft. He was the smartest. He was the most cunning.
Yeah. And like when I think about Paul and like, I believe it was Barabbas who he went to be prayed for, and Barabbas was like, I don't know about this. And I imagine like the people that Kanye has been working with and establishing like the church, because I believe the choir is led by somebody else. I can't remember his name. It's like Jimmy something. I can't remember. You can look it up online, but the people that help produce his album, even his family, like just everybody, it's like that reluctancy to believe that something really happened.
Yeah.
But there's something, I'm sure he's had to patiently endure a lot of criticism and a lot of judgment.
Yeah.
And even now with it being, all this music being out for the public to see, I mean, everybody's got some kind of opinion about it, whether it's positive or negative.
Yeah.
And, that takes a lot of patient endurance.
Faith.
And faith, yes. And we were going back to Selah, just, if we haven't actually said it yet, I don't think, but just go listen to the album, but look up the lyrics and go see it for yourself. That way it's right there in front of you and you know what he's saying.
Yeah.
But there's a part, it's near the end of the song. It's really interesting to me because, he was talking about in one of the songs that, he acknowledges like, he was like, I worked for the devil. Like he was the person he was the thing that was controlling me.
Yeah.
And then he says like, I'm going on strike.
Yeah.
But, I think he really realizes how corrupt, the different industries that he's been in. And, but because of how they're influenced by the world.
Yeah.
And
That's
he's like,
That's hands-on, by the way.
Hands-on. Okay. But he's like, I want to come at it from a different standpoint. He's calling himself a Christian innovator,
which I love,
which is really cool because that's what the church is needed. And he even talks about the historical aspect of like the church used to be
the place because the church had money.
Yes. Like you think, and I mean, it's changed a lot throughout time. Um, unfortunately due to like hypocrisy and things like that. But there was a time when all music was funded through the church or through royalty. But everything was, a lot of it was done through the filter of the church, even art. And, but I think like I really feel like the world has come to a place where people want to know what real love is. And I feel like he understands what that real love is. And he's wanting to take that into the industries that he's involved in. And in this song, Selah, he says, the powers that be done been greedy, the people that are in control, and like they're saying like we need ours by this evening. There's no white flag, no treaty. But to me, this was him saying it's like, but like with Jesus, we got the products, we got the tools, we got the minds, we got the youth, we going wild, we on the loose. People is lying and we are the truth. And then this part, everything old shall now become new. The leaves will be green, bearing fruit. Love God and our neighbor is written in Luke, the army of God, and we are the truth. Like, you can't get around that. I'm sorry. And then it's really interesting. I was reading on genius.com again. And, when we're talking about bearing fruit, like we're talking about like the fruits of the spirit. But they have a note that says, this is Psalms 1:3. They are like trees planted along the riverbank, bearing fruit each season. Their leaves never wither, and they prosper in all they do. Because he says that the leaves will be green. They have this note: green leaves signify the tree is healthy and active, suggesting that the metaphorical fruits that Kanye is bearing are good fruits due to his newly created life by God. I think he was meaning that in more of just a general, like, if you believe and you are in Christ, you are going to be having good fruit, and the whole tree will be healthy, even the leaves. And I know it talks about in Ezekiel, it talks about like this tree of life, and it talks about the leaves, and it's like because the leaves are healthy, it's I believe it says like it helps in providing healing, where it's just like there's no part of you that isn't about communicating the love of Jesus, whether that's in you being healed or you helping others be healed and be rescued essentially and brought back into the love of Christ, because that's what we were all made for. Because we're born again. Born again into the spirit that we were born for. So, but I mean, each song is, there's so much I think that you can dissect through, but that was really the one that I wanted to dissect through. Was there one that you wanted to dissect? I know you talked about hands-on.
No, I think the biggest thing is go listen to it and take time to listen. Don't just like go through it once and be like, I listened to the album and this is my opinion. Like, we've probably listened 10, 15 times easy through the album, and like every time we listen, we're getting more out of it. And I think that's the biggest thing. Like, anytime you listen to something, like, you want to just get the most out of it.
Yeah.
So I think just, go enjoy the album, just listen to what God is doing, like,
Yeah.
in the world. Like, Kanye West is singing about Jesus. Like, I'm just still blows my mind. We were at we had Amy's brother's birthday yesterday, and my mom was like, "Play some Kanye," and I was like, I never would have thought my mom would have been like, "Play some Kanye."
I missed that. That's funny.
And so it's just hilarious because
Yeah.
it's like what the world has tried to use
Yeah.
is nothing compared to what God can do with
Yeah.
it.
Because even like, I understand like some people like, not being a believer. It's like, well, just because it has a Christian message doesn't make it great music. But the music itself
It's
is
phenomenal.
great.
Yeah.
And
Like each track is different, has
yeah.
a different feel to it. Like Water has this like chill feel to it.
It's really good.
It's just, take the chlorine out of the conversation. It's like take the falsehood, take the things that are supposed to be pure. Let's have a real conversation.
Yeah, because like the quality of the lyrics themselves, I mean, he's talking about the Lord, but like I think about Closed on Sunday. I know he like references like Chick-fil-A or whatever, but it's kind of this, it is a metaphor. And the more you listen to it, like he's talking about his family.
Yeah.
And like as it goes on and by the time you get to the end, he's talking about, he's like the Jezebel spirit isn't going to have a hold on his house, which is talking about the sexual spirit.
Yeah.
That's a bold statement.
Oh, yeah. That's big.
I mean, all these songs have bold statements in them, but when he's talking about his family and getting personal, and he does it in sort of a roundabout way,
yeah.
which I understand, but it's like if you really get it, and that's why I encourage you to like go and look at the lyrics and kind of, even if you're not a Christian, even if you don't totally get it. Yeah, even if you don't like rap music, it's like just go look up the lyrics and kind of see, do some research, figure out what he's talking about, because he's talking about real stuff. Mm-hmm. But just the quality of his rhymes are fantastic. Mm-hmm. But just the music itself, the more I was listening to it, it was like, why does this hit me so much? Like I was talking about Mos Def earlier and his sampling style, but when I was listening to this album, I was like, this still feels like Kanye West. Mm-hmm. It's like, it's still very much his own style. It has that kind of raw like punch, but and I have some notes, but one of the things I wrote was it has this raw edge in how he's assertive in his delivery, but also in the musical style choices. And this is kind of getting into like the minutia, but this is the music nerd type stuff. But there's not a lot of layering that goes on. Mm-hmm. And when I'm talking about layering, I'm talking about, it's like an instrument here, voice here, and just layering different instruments and different elements on top of each other. Yeah. There really isn't more than maybe 2 or 3 elements at a time, which is very different from a lot of hip hop music now, where it has, like I think of like trap music, where it almost has this sort of,
it's like hypnotic.
Yes, that's yeah. I was trying to figure out the word. Hypnotic, because there's a lot of like single rhythms or different instruments, but a lot layered on top of each other to where there's so much going on, which I really love that kind of sound as well. And I can get into that some other time, but there's something about the fact that he deliberately because it feels very deliberate, because each thing's really, it stands out more because there isn't as much layering, and it emphasizes each element, whether it's voice or instrument, and it feels very open and exposed.
Yeah. Well, even Selah at the beginning, like, you know, it starts out and then like he starts rapping and there's no drums with him. There's no rhythmic thing. He's the only thing that's rhythmic.
Yeah.
And then when he gets to that verse, it's like John 3:36.
Yeah, there's just those punches, but it emphasizes what he's saying.
Yeah, and then after that point, like the beat comes in with him, but it's very like very conscious decisions on like I'm going to be the only rhythmic thing here. Everything else is going to like it's very sparse in that feel, and then it builds, and then the hallelujah at the end of that track, it's building on this chord structure until like it's this big thing, like it's moving up and up and up, and it's like our praise is rising to heaven, and it's going to God, and it's like it's just going up and up and up. And they were singing at the live service, and like they're even like they like crouch down, and like they're getting like they're grooving with it, and like as they go, they get higher and higher, and they're lifting their hands up and everything. But that's it's a musical representation of what our praises are doing, and like he's showing that in there.
Yeah.
And like water has this kind of like fluid feel to it. It's very chill on it and everything, and it's just like, but
it's so effective because there even is a part where it sounds like a wave crashing or some kind of like water sound, but it's just that, and then like the sort of instrument, like it's very rhythmic instrumental track that is underlying everything.
And the guy that's singing with him on that track, it's like when Kanye starts singing, he's in the background, but he sounds like he's underwater. It's like very kind of like
those editing choices. It's just like, and I just love that it's like there's each element really stands out on its own because it's not a ton of things crammed together at once. And like with water, it's like, even though it's not like necessarily like assertive or aggressive, it still has that sort of rawness to it because it is just using those singular elements, either one after the other or just layering two or three things at a time.
Yeah, and like use this gospel, like it has like this it almost sounds like a train sound. Ding 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 ding.
Yeah,
ding,
I was going to talk about that. Like I don't know what it is. I was just calling it like a singular tone rhythm. And then he layers it with his humming. But then that humming melody, which it's just part of the intro. I guess that's like a counter melody. But then he comes in with Kenny G playing it and vamping it on the saxophone. And it's just like that simple melody line is used in two different ways. But like, it's like when Kenny G like brings it back in on the saxophone. I mean, you know, of course it's going to sound amazing because it's Kenny G, but like he's vamping on it, but it's still the same melody.
Yeah.
And it's just like, but it's just the saxophone. It's nothing else. And it's just like, I don't know, just something about where it's like, I believe in this element, each element so much that I let it stand on its own.
Yeah. Like
that. It's really bold, but it's like, you know that there's quality in it because you let it stand on its own.
Yeah, and I keep bringing it back to like how the kingdom works. Like when you empower somebody in the kingdom, you trust in them that they're going to get the job done and do it in a totally like amazing way. Like it's like, okay, I'm trusting this person to sing on pitch. I'm giving them a microphone.
Yeah.
The whole choir on that live has microphones on. Like
Yeah.
each one of them has a personal microphone on. The horn line has microphones on their horns.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm trusting you to play in tune, to play the right notes, to come in at the right time. I'm trusting you to be a professional, but I'm also trusting you to help elevate this music, bring people into worship. And it's that element right there. It's like, that's how the kingdom operates.
That's really cool. Because it's not just in the recording studio, it's also in his live performances as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. It was just like when listening to it, it was like, what is it that is so like, there's just something about this style that's so gripping to me. And when I realized it was just those musical choices and how if everything feels so deliberate, nothing feels like, because with layering, like there's nothing wrong with it, but a lot of times it's used to cover up something that wouldn't be able to stand on its own.
Yeah.
Like when you're recording like voices, I know like when I first started recording my own stuff, my voice wasn't as strong then, so my voice had like, it would be like double tracked, like 2 of my voices or even 3 of my voices at the same time, in order to fill things out.
Yeah.
And that's really what I'm talking about with like layering. It's like, and there's times when it's like, that's what you need. That's why we have like a full ensemble. It's like a guitar sounds great, but when it's a guitar and drums and bass and a voice, all those elements come together to make something really spectacular. But with this, there's something about the fact that he was able to find different elements and have them stand out on their own. And I mean, he has where it's like, you know, rhythm and instrument and then the voice layered on top of that. And there's even, you know, voice and choir like in Water.
Yeah.
But there's still, it's not overly complicated stuff. And I don't know, that just, I loved that because there's so much confidence in what he's creating because each element was able to stand on its own or just a few together, and it didn't need to be any more than that.
Yeah. That sounds good.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm really excited to talk about not just this album, but other things as well. Like I said, this is something that I've slowly like turned more this way.
Yeah, we were having a conversation. Now we can talk to the camera.
But this is something that is close to my heart, is just talking about music. I know, like as people who love music, have studied music, even like as a married couple, I know like your students used to ask like what we would talk about, and it's like we would talk about like music theory and all this kind of stuff together, like, and you know, even if you're not a music nerd like us, like I hope you can appreciate what we're talking about, because you know, it's not just breaking down the minutia of like chord progressions in a song. Like I don't want to bore anybody with that. But just talking about the message and the passion and getting down to how he is effectively communicating with music, because that's something where it's important to me as a musician, is that the music don't what that's all encompassing with musician, but it's just like when I'm writing a song, it's like, how can I use the music to communicate what I'm singing about in the lyrics? And I really feel like he has done a good job with it. And with his own style, you know.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the biggest things, is like he didn't compromise on his style. He didn't even have to reinvent himself to make this album. Like musically, like he reinvented himself spiritually, but a lot of people, when they go through a big transformation or trying to get curb appeal, like they'll reinvent their whole style. There's a lot of bands that have reinvented like how they sound.
Yeah.
But Kanye made Kanye.
Yeah.
Well, let me say that again. Kanye, like God, made Kanye.
Yeah. And I love the fact that it's like hip hop and rap is not evil.
No. Not over the devil.
No. And God is clearly using it and he wants to use it. And it's not saying like, because there are other like Christian hip hop and rap artists, like Lecrae is a really great one. There's so many out there, but you know, for someone that has the platform he does in, you know, the secular hip hop and rap world, you know, he's able to have a kind of influence that maybe a Christian hip hop artist may not have.
Yeah. His platform is a lot bigger.
Yeah. And it's just awesome to see how God is using that and how Kanye is so willing to let that happen. But I'm excited for more conversations about music and what God's done with it. So
It's gonna be awesome.
But I think that's gonna wrap up talking about Jesus is King.
All right. So let us know what you thought about Jesus is King and our conversation down in the comments below. I'd love to hear what your favorite track was.
Yes.
I think that's a big question for me is like, what's your favorite track? Because they're just so good.
I think mine is Selah. But there's a lot of good ones.
Yeah, like God is really good and Hands On is really good. Water's really good.
Probably Selah and Water are probably my favorites.
But every hour, though, we got the chorus kicking. Nonetheless, let us know what your favorite is down below.
Yep.
And if you have an album that you want us to talk about.
A musical artist, album, even just a song.
Yeah.
Like, let us know.
Yeah. Let us know. We'll talk about it and figure it all out. But we're hoping to make more and more of these. So like it, share it with somebody that you love that should listen to Jesus is King. Like if you're like, hey, Jesus is King's really good, and they're like, I don't do hip hop, and you're like, but how about this? And then you know what I'm talking about. We'll convince them.
Just send them the last track. Just send them Jesus is Lord, and it's like it's only like 49 seconds. It's not even a minute long, and just
sneak in there. Sneak in there. So thank you so much for watching.
Yeah.
If you want to support us, you can go over to patreon.com/bealight to help us make more of these shows. It does take time to listen to this music on repeat. And come up with discussions and everything. But we thank you so much for taking time out of your day. We appreciate you so much. This has been Zach.
And Amy.
Now have a blessed week.